WEFUNK. We funk.
But so you said that was the last one you did, so you haven't done the Old Guard yet, huh?
Correct. Well, this is a really recent film. I wasn't even aware that it was coming out. It just kind of dropped out of nowhere from where I was standing.
Everybody's been talking about it as well. It's been me and Devin have been talking about to catch you up on the show, but it got an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, so the people really enjoyed it. Me and Devin, however, not so much. Felt a little bit of some plot holes, you know.
I'm putting it in between. I was telling Liam that we've watched for the Netflix and chat so far, at least for action movies, we've watched Spencer Confidential and we've watched Extraction. And I'm saying in a world of Extraction and Spencer Confidential, the Old Guard falls right in the middle. It's definitely better than
we're in the meaty part of the curve with a.
Who's on the top and the bottom of that sandwich?
Extraction is on the very top. I thought that I was blown away. Did not expect that movie to be what it was, and was pleasantly surprised. And Spencer Confidential, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be, but worse.
Oh no!
But somehow more Boston accents, which is hard to do.
If you haven't seen it, watch it just for like the sheer insanity.
I mean, Mans is a couple of years ahead of us. Are you familiar with Spencer Confidential as like an '80s TV thing? Because me and Devin were not. We had no idea what it was.
No.
Okay, I see.
Of all the things that have come back from the past, like that does not ring a bell.
Yeah. Dude, who knew? We had never heard of it either. But
Spencer Confidential show, and then there's a spin-off show from his sidekick, Hulk.
Yeah, I forgot.
Has 2 seasons of his own show. There's 8 TV movies. It was mind-blowing to figure it out, but the movie is just, as someone like yourself that watches tons of these movies and see kind of these things, literally just write an action movie checklist and you could every action movie stereotype.
Yeah, it was almost like a scary movie of a So how about
we call it movie Mad Libs over on my show,
nice.
Especially my show Third Time's a Charm, because we're at the third movie in the franchise.
Yes.
They're just furiously trying to fill in the blanks with any verb or adjective possible.
For sure. How do we get a crazy, money-hungry scientist involved? Okay, we'll call him Merrick, and he'll be the guy that sets up Copley, I guess, to get us into the Old Guard. How about you give everybody your thoughts? Me and Devin have already given our we haven't given our official review yet, and we'll get your review before you go, but what were your overall kind of feelings and thoughts as somebody who just watched the Old Guard?
Right. Okay. So first, I just got to say, I think like most of us, I'm just starving for new movies, new, cool-looking action movies, and this looked like something at first glance that I'd be excited to go see in the theater, like the new Charlize action flick. Sounds pretty awesome, based off a graphic novel. All right, sure. I was kind of underwhelmed, to be quite honest. I'm pretty glad I got to watch it from home. At the end of the day.
That's funny enough. That's a normal kitschy question that I was going to ask you later. Would you go to the theater?
Right.
So you're ahead of us there. But yeah, no, you would have been upset if you paid the $15 for that one, huh?
Well, I was just underwhelmed. I was expecting it. Quality-wise, it looks great. It plays fine, but it just kind of is a little rote, and it focuses on things that I've seen 100 times, where there's all this stuff that it could explore that it chooses not to, and I think it just doesn't know how to spend its time very well, and it gets a little convoluted. I think there's a few too many characters, and it's a bit on the longer side for what story it's trying to tell.
No, and you're right there about there's definitely they're covering ground that's been covered a million times, like you said. However, they're doing it in a unique enough kind of angle where there is opportunity for for something new in the field of immortal warriors, but they choose to go through these same Mad Libs kind of thing, like you said, where it's just a lot of these same action movie kind of things that happen, but. But it's not incapable of being something different because it's close enough to being original and unique. But
yeah, and like you were saying too, I think to me too, them just I've been saying it over and over, them just having the Wolverine powers isn't enough. They definitely have a psychic bond. They're definitely magical to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying earlier too, they even imply at one point later on where what's his face Copley is has this whole diagram of them through history, and the way he's explained what they did, he's she saved this man And 100 years later, his grandson like came up with the cure for polio, and I was like, "Wait, what the fuck?" Like,
how this whole thing works?
Like pure coincidence? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things where it's like, did we really need that again? Like that this guy cracked the conspiracy of the immortals. Like he seems like kind of redundant in a lot of ways. Like we already have the mad scientist. Just make him the guy who figured it out. That kind of worked in the new Shazam movie where the guy was trying to figure out magic and he was also the main scientist.
Yeah.
Like
no, that's true. That would have been a cool little twist on it.
But yeah, like I was kind of bummed with the immortal stuff as well. Like they're just a bunch of Wolverines kind of running around, and even with that, when they tried to tell like the Wolverine origins, they didn't even tell that. Like,
yeah, great call. They never gave you any establishing of how or why. It was just very random that they got it, and very random that conveniently when the plot called, they need that it ended, and like, well, someday we'll just randomly not be immortal, after.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of loopholes too. Like,
yeah, for sure.
The fact of just like, you're immortal like until you're not, and then the other thing too is that like you dream of each other when you're not together, right? So obviously they would have had to stop having nightmares about the lady drowning the second she got free, wouldn't they? Like she's all sneaky. Hey, I'm back. Like shouldn't everybody be like, hey, she's in a hotel room right now? All have that same dream.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was kind of one of my takeaways by bringing her back at the end, and it gets us into another kitschy question that me and Devin always ask ourselves, but I just felt like that was just such a setup of, like, the sequel and franchise potential that this movie seems to feel it has. Mm-hmm. And me and Devin were saying that scene really felt like it would have been a post-credit scene or should have been a post-credit scene when Quinn, or whatever her name was, came back. But what do you feel about like the franchise or the sequel? And Devin did mention, I think, that it is officially has been picked up for a sequel, correct?
Yeah, it's already been greenlit for a sequel.
Okay, so there'll officially be a number 2, but I felt that they were kind of going for franchise opportunity, which in my book it was kind of like we're saying, they're setting up, they're this vague, like realistic superheroes put into a more realistic world, put into more realistic applications of a superhero. All right, cool and unique, but they don't establish any of the above or whatnot. So it's like, in terms of a franchise, what do you see, or a sequel? Are we excited? What do we have going next for the Old Guard franchise?
Well, I think now that I know what they're going for, like, there's definitely potential to explore some stuff. Like, for sure, this is the new girl's story, right? Like, that's her origin story, the military girl who gets the powers, right? Like, this is her movie. Like, and I was expecting it to be like Charlize Theron throughout history being a badass and shit. And so I think now they can tell more of those kinds of things in sequels. They could sort of prequelize parts of it, flash even further back.
I wasn't really thinking of Charlize in the Civil War, but you're right. That's definitely
like, I don't necessarily need to see her in the Civil War, but like I do want to see more of these immortals interacting throughout time. Like, I think that is where they should really focus more. I think we've seen enough of this. They're stuck in sort of like the Matrix, like they're all wearing black with heavy machine guns doing lots of kung fu.
Yeah.
And like,
they're not very happy with life. Like they're not like vampires that are like loving the fact that
they don't want to be immortal. And I think a very cool hook was how Charlize is still alive but doesn't have that power anymore. So now she's sort of, maybe she's more of like the Nick Fury of the group or something. At this
I mean, I think Copley was definitely the Fury of the group.
Okay, yeah.
So
at the end, for
easily,
sure.
Like, hey, you tricked us. Will you be our leader now? Like, what the fuck? The other thing, too, and I wanted to see if you want to agree with me on that. Can we agree that Merrick, the villain of the film, really wasn't that bad of a guy besides being, like, greedy? Like, his end game was to make, like, a pill to help people? And they were all just like, no.
It's funny because that's like that. I just ran into that in like 2 different things. One was like a Star Trek movie where like an alien wanted to like kill this race because they had regenerative powers to benefit the rest of like the galaxy, right? And he's like, what does it matter if we destroy one planet to save everyone else? And it's just like
quite the moral conundrum.
Yeah, and it's just like so easy, right? Like I feel like they could have gone further and made him more of a sadistic bastard. Like
For sure.
I just watched Sense8, and there's a really great villain in that who goes beyond just being sort of this for-profit medical guy, right? Like he's really sick and like wants to dissect things for fun, and that would have been a nice sort of push.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
I mean, I think Merrick's biggest problem was just his goofy face, and they were like, "No, I don't trust that guy." Another thing too, like I was saying, his greed in it was just that, like, you know, the one guy who betrayed them all already wanted to like die anyway. He could have easily just turned himself into the scientist and been like, "Hey, man, just like use me." But stupid Merrick,
Dude, totally.
like, no, I need every one of them. No, you don't.
I know. Can we start with this guy at least? Can we like come to that conclusion after 20 years of work on this guy? Like,
yeah, there's a lot of weird plot, like you say, like there's tons of plot holes and things for convenience. Let me run one by you that really, like, I've kind of found like unforgivable. So we do get flashbacks of Charlize and like her betrothed, like her love of her life, right? And they're like these two badass women warriors kicking ass through time. And then suddenly they're caught at the Salem witch trials. Like they can't fight their way out of Salem, Massachusetts.
Good call. I didn't put that together, but like,
the Quakers got us again.
Seriously.
Like, how the hell did that happen? Like that to me was like, no. Like you got to figure out something. If that's
the mongrels
from the book,
and Vikings ain't got shit on the Quakers. God damn it. That's
because it seems like you got to behead one of these fuckers before their powers run out, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to keep a head in a jar over here and their body in a coffin over there, and hope like they don't dead.
That's what I always think of too, man, is that like I thought they might have gone the Highlander route when they're like, well, we're kind of immortal. I was like, oh, unless you chop their head off. They're like, nope, sometimes you just die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They kind of hint that there can only be a couple at a time, but not really. It's like if you're gonna at least bring that up, like let's explore that more. Maybe in the sequels.
And it also wasn't even like age based necessarily, because the one of the warriors that did die was younger than Charlize when he died, when his time came, or whatever, you know what I mean? So it was like, and they definitely should have established, I felt, that a lot more of them had died over the years, you know what I mean? And these were like the particular, it was just like, all right, so like a couple thousand years ago, Theron is immortal. 700 years after that, the couple is immortal. Then in 1812, and now in 2020, it's just like throughout the course of history, there should be at least 100 of these assholes, and these are the four that are.
Was that like how rare this is supposed to be? There's only like 4 or 5 of them. Yet Nikki and Joe were like at the same place at the same time, fighting each other, and the Crusades like, oh, we're both immortal. Should we fuck?
We killed each other. Funny story about our relationship. We're actually immortal warriors. Killed each other in battles.
Yeah, we briefly mentioned Hancock way back a while, and like I feel like that movie ran into similar issues where you have this group of immortal heroes throughout time. It wasn't just Will Smith and Charlize. They're like, we're just the last two.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, in like the 1940s, they go to see Frankenstein, and Will Smith gets assaulted and loses his memory, and she kind of backs off. But the whole point of that is you can't, like, the closer you're together, the weaker you are. So they had to sort of spread out and be by themselves. And there's sort of like an interesting built-in solitude to Hancock. And that
for
kind of,
sure.
You empathize with someone like that who's like in self-isolation and stuff, that like, even if he's a drunk bastard, you still want to see him reform in some way like that. And I felt like these guys, the old guard, like, why am I supposed to really care? Like, until like the very end when he's like, you saved a life that saved the life that saved the life. It's like, well,
very randomly. And
like that was so random too. Like, couldn't they just be like, hey, you saved Albert Einstein one time?
Yes.
Like, why does it have to be like Albert Einstein's grandfather? Like,
just call it out.
Talking about,
It's like, because of you, we had Barack Obama. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And like,
I guess we've
definitely not, because they're getting handed out missions. It makes no sense.
Yeah. So I guess on that note, though, we've covered a lot of our plot holes and all, and your general things. Do you have like an official review that you want to give us for your thoughts on the Old Guard? Yeah.
So a good site I like to use that I log all my screenings on is Letterboxd. I don't know if you two are familiar with that, but that's like a really great site, and you can rate it, review it, see what everybody else thinks of it. Is all that kind of stuff. And I actually gave it 3 stars on that site, 3 out of 5 stars. So
3 out of 5. Wow.
Well, I'll explain why. I think part of it is because I'm kind of starved for content. Okay. Like there's definitely that fell into the mix. Part of it is what is here. It's not that it's not bad. Like, they didn't fuck up any of the shots. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a production, it looks great. It feels like a feature. Like
that is very true, and you've said it a couple times. It does look great. It does hold weight as like a blockbuster Hollywood movie. I didn't necessarily enjoy it. There was some plot holes, blah blah blah. But you're right in terms of like accomplishing, looking and feeling like a bigger than life kind of production.
Yeah. But I just feel like I personally have seen too much of this stuff. Like it's underworld during the day. Like it's a lot of that kind of same leather-clad, kicking-ass secret in the
Underworld
shadows.
during the day is a great way to put it.
And I love Underworld. I love Kate Beckinsale.
But a dish best served after 11 p.m. for sure.
I'm the king of backhanded compliments sometimes. Like I just don't know where they come from, but. I think other people will enjoy this more than I did, and it kept my attention, and it was more of a snack than a meal. So, it just kind of fell a little flat for me.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into ours in a minute, me and Devin, but that was definitely you're covering some of the grounds. I definitely felt the same thing where it was held my attention, looked good. However, plot holes and whatnot. So some ups and downs, but not abysmal, but. How about Devin?
Not unwatchable by any means,
definitely
right?
Watch worse, trust me.
Do you have anything else for Manz here, Dev? Before we say goodbye, we have
covers all the.
That covers all of our Charlize Theron stuff. Do we have any breaking? You are as well our Nick Cage, our resident Nick Cage expert. Do we have any Nick Cage talk that we need to get out? Do we have any Tiger
Liam,
King answers? What's this crazy movie where he plays himself in a world where he's being murdered or something?
I mean, here's the thing about Cage, right? It's like last year around this time, I was really worried because he had not released a movie yet. And then last time in 2019, we got a movie in August, September, October, November, December, January. Okay? Like he was on a fucking streak. Now it's a drought again. So I'm just my fingers crossed for at least one new Cage release. I know like 1 or 2 are at least like in post-production or finished. He did like a Five Nights at Freddy type movie where he's locked in a Chuck E. Cheese after dark, and that one I really want to see that one really, really bad.
I've seen trailers, or I've heard of that one anyway. Is that the one what's the one where he's playing Nick Cage? I think that might be that one.
So that's I don't know much about that if that started filming yet, but that's sort of supposed to come out next year. I think the idea is like he might have to reenact scenes from his movies to
something crazy like
save
that,
the world or save his life or something.
Very nice.
Something crazy like that.
Well, I'm giving that one a Mandy scream, as the Netflix and chat audience would know. But I guess on that note, though, we should.
If you if you need 2 guests for the old guard watching the Theron episode.
Oh well, I mean, I
swallowed this pill, so
we 2 guys that have watched it, so
like we could talk, but like so my show Third Time's a Charm, I'm actually thinking about shuttering that by next year, and I definitely want to get you guys on that show. I've got a couple selections I picked out. Nice. Especially for you guys, we can talk about off the air, but
for sure,
we gotta definitely do more.
I mean, we love, especially Devin over there is our resident franchise guy, so we love we love lots of movies about the same thing.
You love running something into the ground as much as I do.
Oh, that's right. Squeeze it for every bit it's worth.
But all right, so I guess with that, we will say goodbye to Manz. Thanks again so much. We'll definitely be on the lookout for all the great stuff on CageClub.me, and check him out. Mike Manzi, search Spotify, all your other platforms.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure having you on, dude. It's always
thanks, guys.
Your expertise on the subject.
I love it. I appreciate it very much. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Big F! WEFUNK. We funk.